Welcome to my Asshole Podcast. Let's get into it. Today is Thursday. We got another awesome episode for you guys, an interesting thread, as well as chapters 15 and 16 for A Court of Thorns and Roses. Now, last week with A Court of Thorns and Roses, man, your boy was fighting the EPs. I ain't gonna lie to you, man. This book has, I'm so waiting for this book to get fucking good. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a little bits that are happening here and there. Like, we got our boy Tamlin, you can tell he's trying to be like the macho man. He really trying to get him some coochie by Faye. He really trying to fuck her. It's crazy how bad he's trying to get him some coochie. Now, the other guy, though, it feels like he likes her, but he's trying to get at her in the way of like, oh, I don't want to hang out with you. Why would I want to be around you? Oh, you're a human. And you know what I mean? But he has feelings. And it's like, nigga, what? But Tamlin out here, he making it known. He like, hey, baby, trying to get with you. I'm trying to get up in them 19-year-old walls. You know what I mean? Like, he teaching her how to read. He's taking her to hunt. He's teaching her about like the high fae and their what's it called? Their like history, I guess, and how this disease came about, and how this shit is going on, and why I can't remember what they're called, but why they're getting attacked and how stuff is getting through the fog and all this other crap. He's really like getting to know her, and he's like, Farah, I like you, girl. I'm trying to get with that, but at the same time, I'm trying to, make it seem like I ain't trying to get with that. I don't know. I could be wrong, but that's just what it's seeming like right now. And that's really the only interesting dynamic in this book right now. I feel like I am bored as hell of the world. I don't really care about the world that they're vaguely explaining. And then two, it's just like there are no interesting characters outside of Tamlin. I'm like, bro, anytime Tamlin's involved, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, at least some shit is happening. But with every other character, it just seems like nothing is happening. So I am really hoping, man, that we start to break this little mold and we get into some interesting shit. But without further ado, let's get into our thread, and then we will hop back into our book. Today's thread is Human Resources. What are some NSFW complaints you've had to investigate? All right. So let's see what crazy ass shit you HR people have had to deal with motherfuckers at work. All right. I was a manager of a retail store, so I did a lot of HR related stuff. So most of my employees were women. Most of my customers were women. The women's bathroom got 90% of the attention, but that said, the men's room was a bad time with a rare man that came in. Days come and we'd get a complaint about the smell coming from the bathroom. A big guy, and a main rule was that I wasn't ask my employees to do things I wouldn't do because I made much more than they did. So I put on latex gloves and marched back to the men's bathroom. It was fine, completely fine. Well, a scrape or two or toilet paper, but fine. I open the women's room door and I am struck by the stench of rot. It basically knocks me off my feet. I open the door all the way. The ceiling, floor, and every wall is covered in shit. Finger marks in it, so it was painted. What? I take a minute to be shocked, close the door, tape it off, tell my boss I'm calling a cleanup crew. He says no, I can clean it. I tell him he can get bent if he'd seen what I'd seen. He would know better. He says okay. 10 days or so later, it happens again. And at that point, the only woman in the store had been my employees. Uh-oh. It was essentially an open and shut case. One is a barely functional germaphobe, and the other had washed her hands at least 5 times, smelled like death, and wouldn't make eye contact with me. Maria, what the fuck are you doing? Sometimes I smoke a little something and then I hear the bugs in the toilet. I just have to finish them out before they drown?
What?
So I'm gonna go find a pen that I don't want anymore. You can keep it after you touch it, and just write down everything you just told me and how many times you've done that. So she sticks her hand in the doo-doo water. She gets doo-doo on her fingers, and then she's like, oh, I have to kill the flies or kill the bugs in the toilet? Because she gets high as fuck, so high to where she thinks there's bugs in the toilet and she has to reach her hand in there, and she had like, what the hell? Okay. That way we can figure out what to do from here. While she did that, I called my boss. Hey, so there's a problem with Maria. When there's an employee, there's no problems, just opportunities. Great. So Maria has an opportunity to, with doing drugs, then smearing shit on the walls because she hears bugs in the toilet. Obviously, she got fired, but I kept her on staff long enough to get her into rehab. That is crazy. I mean, at least she was coming to work, but that's a little wild. That's too much. Like, what are you smoking to get that high to where you think there's bugs in the toilet, so you reach your hand in there and you smear doo-doo all over the walls and shit? Like, what in the hell are you doing, girl? Like, golly. To me, that just makes no sense. How you would get that high and then go to work. I'd be paranoid as fuck if I was that high going to work. And then there ain't no way I'd be able to shit. Like, I'm just saying. All right. Employee coming in early to take a dump on the boss's desk. Yo. Wow. Imagine the investigation on that. Boss comes in and they see a hot pile and a dookie on there, and they're like, what the hell is going on here? They get on the cameras, they see who it is, and then they bring them in, and they're just like, they probably put it in a bag or some shit, I don't know, and they're just like, was this you? Because it looks like it's you on the camera taking a shit on my desk. Like, what the fuck is this? What's this about? I would love to hear his justification. I would love to hear his justification, because there's no good reason why you would shit on your boss's desk. There's no good reason. So that's why I would love to hear the justification he gave in that meeting, because there's no fucking way. There's no way that man kept his job. There's no way, or that woman, or whoever it was. Got a call from a client asking if we had watched the news yet that day. We hadn't, so we started looking at the website of the local station, and lo and behold, there was my coworker's mugshot. He had been arrested for possession of 500,000 kitty porn images.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
Bastard spent 5 years behind bars. I spent a few months combing servers for evidence of him using them for additional storage. So this dude was using servers at work as additional storage to keep his kitty porn. Yo! What? No! I'm a lost for words, bro. That is crazy. And then imagine if you're like the type of person, you work close to that dude, and you're just like, yo, this motherfucker like kitty porn. And he was using the work servers to store that shit. Wow. Oh, man. You think you know somebody. Shit. Around the year of 2008, our IT director came in to my office and wanted to see me something that he had discovered in our internet surveillance software. A guy in accounting had installed a program on his computer to make it appear that he was on Yahoo while he was actually surfing porn. That's crazy. There were thousands of images saved in a hidden folder on his computer. It was an open and shut investigation. Also explains why he took such long bathroom breaks. The dude was just about passed out when we confronted him. As I was walking him out of the building, he asked if I was going to tell his fiance. No way, dude, but I will share this on Reddit. That's crazy, son. Wow. Homeboy was just like, yeah, I get paid to jerk it all day long, man. And then he was like, there is a way on Windows to have a hidden folder where like you can click on it, but you can't see it on the desktop. And I guarantee you he had one of those folders and it just had thousands of porn videos and photos and all kind, like, my nigga. You couldn't, well, okay, this was 2008, so maybe not. I was thinking like you couldn't use your phone, but yeah, no, this is 2008. Phones weren't that advanced back then. Back in my day, I remember having a cell phone in 2008. Yeah, no, I was actually no, fuck. I didn't have no cell phone in 2008. I only had a cell phone in 2010, 11. Yeah, because I wasn't as a kid. Seeing kids having phones, that shit trips me the fuck out. I didn't have a phone until I was like junior in high school. It was crazy. You know, like, it was wild to me. Kids having phones, like little kids having iPhones and shit. I'm like, nigga, what the fuck? You know, but it's the time though, so I get it. You know what I mean? Back in 2008, man, I had no fucking phone. I was up on AOL, like shit, using the family computer. I was in the living room. You know, like shit, craziness. That is crazy, but yeah, no, it makes sense. It makes sense why he was doing what he was doing. Shit. All right, I was in orientation with a guy, just me and him, and HR was explaining why you can't have any porn on company property. That's crazy how often this happens to where it's in the orientations. That's crazy that how often this happens. He argued that if he wants to sit in his car and read Hustler at lunchtime, it's nobody's business because it's on his own time and in his car. Surprisingly, he didn't lose his job, but he got written up 3 times in 30 days for various infractions, and he was then gone. Nigga. Wait till you get home to beat your meat, bro. Like, you don't have to beat your meat at work. It's not that serious. I mean, I guess it is if you're dealing with addiction, you know, and it's a real problem. I understand that. But it's just crazy to me to think like some dudes, they are itching to beat their meat that bad to where they have to do it at work. And it's like, bruh, you don't have enough work to do. You know, you can't sit around and be paid to just be on TikTok or Instagram or something like that. Like, shit. Like at my job on my downtime, man, shit, I'm on TikTok and, you know, I'm interacting with you guys, whether it's TikTok or Instagram and stuff like that, or the podcast. Like, bruh, I have other things to do. Like, I'll wait till I get home to do all that. Like, what are y'all doing? Oh, that's crazy, man. That's just crazy. All right, worked in HR, used to work for a manufacturing company. A guy came into the office and told us that he wanted to be removed from his department because a supervisor was making him feel unsafe. We asked him who the individual was, what they had done to them to make them feel unsafe, as we needed all the information we can get to start the investigation. Turns out that him and this guy were having sexual relations outside of work, and it was going on for several months until his abuser tried to grape him. He showed us text messages that they had between one another, and how his abuser would constantly text him on and off work about how he wanted to fuck him and how he expects to see him at his house, etc. Okay. Crazy enough, while they were on the clock together, his abuser would never interact with him in person and act like they didn't have any kind of relation at all. Straight up pretended like they were coworkers that never talked. It was pretty open and shut, as the guy confirmed everything and begged us not to release him, as he would never do it again. We released him, and the same day we had the victim move departments, but he resigned a couple of weeks later. Wow. That's crazy. Homeboy was getting smacked up in the booty hole by a coworker. That's crazy. Yo. I mean, wow. Wow. That's all I got to say. It's just wow. Like, what else is there to say? Like, shit. Man. Oh, I couldn't imagine being in a situation like that. All right. I was the manager. An employee complained that there were condoms in her garbage can. Often we installed a camera in the hallway outside her office. After the third or fourth time, it was her with different guys. A coworker who knew her husband found one. She made up a story about breaking into her office after hours and doing it on her desk, but she was staying late and had at least 3 guys she admitted to after she got caught. So she pretty much snitched on herself. You stupid. Like, what are you doing? You told them, oh, I don't like, I have a complaint to make. There's somebody that is throwing away condoms in my trash can. And then they investigate and they find out them condoms are being used on her. Like, no shit, they're in your trash can, Shelby. They were used to fuck you. No shit. Of course the guy's going to take it off and throw it in the trash right next to your desk. No shit. And then you have a husband on top of that. Damn. And it was 3 dudes. I bet those 3 dudes were all homies and they were just like, yeah, oh, Shelby's pussy's good, bro. Yeah. Oh, man, I'll be getting up in them cheeks, man. Like, shit. Like, you be using a condom, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll be throwing them condoms away in her trash, bro. I ain't getting caught with that shit in my trash. You know what I mean? Like, fuck that. Like, facts. Oh, yeah. Like, you know, come on, man. Like, she made the complaint and then got caught. Like, stupid. Absolutely stupid. Ay. All right, my old job had security go through and check to make sure the offices were locked at the end of the day. As a result, they more than once walked in on people fucking in offices. The best example was the manager with an engineer from a different department. You could argue it wasn't bad since he wasn't sleeping with someone he had direct oversight over. The only problem being was his what his department was. He was the manager of HR. Needless to say, he was no longer employed there after that. Whoa. So that HR rep was just like, what up, manager girl? God damn. Like, hey, ain't nobody gotta know I'm that guy. I'm up in the HR, so we can do this. And she's like, oh, word? Yeah? So we can get down and dirty up in the office and ain't nobody knowing. Like, damn right. You know, like, we can do the dang thing. And then I got fired. Stupid. Like, my God, like, coochie ain't worth your fucking job, man. A minor sending everyone video of him having sex with another minor who also worked there. Then an adult manager who decided she should proposition the male minor because of his performance in the video. Ooh. Like, look, brother. Yeah, like, you don't need to be sending that out to people. You know, like, why are you sending that out to people? And then the grown folks at that. Like, if I got a video like that, and that's a minor girl right there, I would delete that as fast as possible. There ain't no fucking way people was about to misinterpret that as me liking to look at little girls or something. Like, nah, bro. And I would have confronted him too. I'd have probably socked him in his mouth. Like, the fuck are you doing? Like, these are grown ass folks, man. You know that doing that, you could get us in trouble. That's a minor girl. I get it. You're a minor, she's a minor, and that's fine. Do your thing. Have your videos. If you want to show people it on your phone, okay, whatever, as long as they're cool with it. But you don't go around sending that shit to people's phones, man, because you're going to get me in trouble. And I ain't trying to lose my job over your goofy ass. Like, bruh, that's too much. That's too much. Yeah, man, that kid would get socked in the mouth, bro. You ain't fucking with my money. A friend of mine is an engineer that was using ChatGPT to help write his emails and help with Excel formulas and macros. However, he was signed into ChatGPT with his personal email account, which also had a log of the more private writing exercises he would have ChatGPT do for him. This was noticed during a Zoom call when he was presenting a report by sharing his desktop. An eagle-eyed viewer noticed the ChatGPT logs in the sidebar while he was cycling between internet tabs and managed to grab a screenshot of it. So the sidebar read things like how to reference adjacent cells in a data validation, automatically outputting spreadsheet data into a formatted email, the sexy island adventures of Dread Pirate Booty Beard. This nigga, bruh. Oh my god, no. And then importing general MD5 file hashes into a cell. I love how he had all that and then randomly just had the sexy island adventures of Dread Booty Island. Like, this nigga, bro. IT investigated his computer and reviewed the ChatGPT logs. It was determined he was writing ChatGPT erotica in his free time, and the nature of the erotica wasn't anything too terribly outlandish, but the funniest thing about it was how 80% of the erotic conversations was this poor guy constantly fighting with ChatGPT to ignore its content filters and to stop using the term female genitalia when he obviously wanted to use his smut less clinical sounding. He had uncomfortable meeting with HR, was notified that his personal project should never ever touch his company computer, and he had to create a new email account to sign in to ChatGPT, which caused a problem. He was paying premium for his personal account, so he had to choose between premium GPT for his career or premium GPT for his smut. He chose smut. I don't blame him. Dude's paying for it with his own money, so he should use it for personal use. If the company notices a dip in quality of work because he has to use an older ChatGPT model, well, they mandated it. They can pay for it. Facts. You can pay for that shit if you want me to use it. You know, I get it, man. I get it. Like, what I do on my own time is what I do on my own time. And it's not like I put it up on the presentation. Now, I get it. You could see the tab and it was there. But at the same time, why are you focusing on my tabs, man? You know, why you put me on blast like that? Focus on the PowerPoint at hand here and what we're talking about, not my tabs, okay? Leave my sexy island booty pirate adventures alone, bruh. All right? Like, shit. I'm out here trying to be a smut novelist, okay? Leave me alone. This is what I like to do, all right? Damn. Focus on the presentation. I'd kind of be hot. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'd be kind of hot the fact that I got in trouble for my own shit. Yeah, look, I get it. You know, it shouldn't be there. But why are you looking at my tabs? You know what I mean? Because that was the only tab that shouldn't have been there. It's my sexy adventure time booty pirate thing, you know? But everything else was work related, right? And it's not like he clicked on that tab and you guys could read it, you know? or I was showing some jiggly butts or something like that to all our coworkers and stuff on the Zoom call. Like, I don't know. I look at it like, that's fucked up. You know, my tabs should be my tabs regardless. You know, it's not like I put that on the screen. It's not like I'm out here, you know, trying to show people that. Like, you found that on your own. You could have easily ignored it, you know, but you wanted to put me on blast. You wanted to do all this extra shit. I think that's kind of fucked up. I ain't gonna lie. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and do 2 more. I had to self-report myself to HR about 10 years ago. I'm an IT guy, and we had a live issue with the email system stalling when trying to process file attachments. 5 of us on call, me sharing my screen as well as we investigated the issue. I randomly opened one of the stalled email attachments. We all could see that there was a list of files waiting to be scanned by antivirus, not the names of recipients or senders, and bam, there's a photo of Becky from payroll with her tits out. Yo! Hey, I closed the image. No one said anything on the call for a while. Then we fixed the email problem and closed the call. I couldn't risk someone else from the call going to HR first, so I walked straight down the corridor, passed by payroll for a sit down with the HR manager. It was announced a few weeks later that Becky would be moving on to a new company. Damn. And see, I would have to do that too. I kudos to this guy, because I would have done the same thing. I'd have been like, hey, yo, look, you know, I was on the call. We're, you know, trying to fix this attachment issue. We got the issue fixed, and then I don't know where I happened to see a picture of Becky and her titties. We closed it though. I'm just coming to you to let you know the situation. This was nothing malicious. This was nothing to like blackmail Becky. This was nothing, you know, like sexual harassment. None of that shit. You ain't fucking with my money, Becky. Yeah, you and your big ass titties ain't fucking with my shit, okay? You're like, damn, Becky, they was nice, and I kind of wish I would have just been like, and then closed it. But hey, you know, that's what happens. It's cool. I'd rather have my job than Becky's big old titties. You know what I mean? I can go hit the hub and see some big old titties. I don't need to see yours, Becky. So, you know, hey, he did the right thing. He did the right thing. And, you know, he also probably saved everybody else who was in that call as well, because they saw it too. You know, they saw them titties too. You know what I mean? And shit, they might have been like, damn, no shit. What are we going to do about this? You know, I'm just saying. All right, let's get on to the last one for this thread. And then we will get into chapters 15 and 16 for A Court of Thorns and Roses. All right. I worked in a hospital setting and heard about it from HR. The hospital I used to work at had generic ID cards. They had your name only, not your title. A housekeeper brought a white doctor's coat and stitched his name into it to pass it off as a doctor. Thankfully, he never attempted patient care. He only did it to hit on nurses. Supposedly, he was quite successful. He only got found out because a nurse he used to be with caught him with another nurse, and a sexual harassment complaint was made against him to retaliate. I can only imagine HR's face when they slowly realized that there was no Dr. John Smith, only a housekeeper. Oh shit, my man's got found out, and they probably put his ass on blast. All the nurses were probably giggling at him like, stupid motherfucker. Like, you retarded. Oh my god. And then it's like, bro, you understand that impersonating a doctor, you can go to jail for that? My guy, you are playing with immense fire on that. You can go to jail. Like, bro, that's not something to play with. You can spend at minimum a year in jail. A year in jail. That's a whole 12 months in the slammer for impersonating a doctor just to get some coochie, bro. That's not worth it. That is not worth it at all, dude. Oh, man. But that's going to be the end of that thread. I hope you guys enjoyed that thread. And thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you so much. I know you guys are very excited about getting into chapters 15 and 16. Hopefully you're more excited than I am. Because like I said, man, I'm hoping some shit happens in this fucking book, man. God damn. By the time we were at chapter 15, 16, and Haunting Adeline, some shit was happening. Like, it was juicy. This book, though, boy, is taking its time. But without further ado, I'm going to stop ranting and bitching and complaining, and we're going to get into this. So, here we are, A Court of Thorns and Roses, chapters 15 and 16.
Chapter 15. The Naga were sprung from a nightmare. Covered in dark scales and nothing more, they were a horrendous combination of serpentine features and male humanoid bodies, whose powerful arms ended in polished black, flesh-shredding talons. Here were the creatures of the blood-filled legends, the ones that slipped through the wall to torment and slaughter mortals, the ones I would have been glad to kill that day in the snowy woods. Their huge, almond-shaped eyes greedily took in the Suriel and me. The four of them paused across the clearing, the Suriel between us, and I trained my arrow toward the one in the center. The creature smiled, a row of razor-sharp teeth greeting me as a silvery forked tongue darted out. "The Dark Mother has sent us a gift today, brothers," he said, gazing at the Suriel, who was clawing at the snare now. The Naga's amber eyes shifted toward me again. "And a meal." "Not much to eat," another one said, flexing its claws. I began backing away, toward the stream, toward the manor below, keeping my arrow pointed at them. One scream from me would notify Lucian, but my breath was thin. And he might not come at all if he'd sent me here. I kept every sense fixed on my retreating steps. "Human," the Suriel begged. I had 10 arrows, 9 once I fired the one knocked in my bow. None of them ash, but maybe they'd keep the Naga down long enough for me to flee. I backed away another step. The 4 Naga crept closer, as if savoring the slowness of the hunt, as if they already knew how I tasted. I had 3 heartbeats to make up my mind, 3 heartbeats to execute my plan. I drew my bowstring back farther, my arm trembling. And then I screamed, sharp and loud, and with every bit of air in my too tight lungs. With the Naga now focused entirely on me, I fired at the tether holding the Suriel in place. The snare shattered. Like a shadow on the wind, the Suriel was off, a blast of dark that set the 4 Naga staggering back. The one closest to me surged toward the Suriel, the strong column of its scaly neck stretching out. No chance of my movements being considered an unprovoked attack anymore, not now that they'd seen my aim. They still wanted to kill me. So I let my arrow fly. The tip glittered like a shooting star through the gloom of the forest. I had all of a blink before it struck home and blood sprayed. The Naga toppled back just as the remaining 3 whirled to me. I didn't know if it was a killing shot. I was already gone. I raced for the stream, using the path I'd calculated earlier, not daring to look back. Lucian had said he'd be nearby, but I was deep in the woods, too far from the manor and help. Branches and twigs snapped behind me, too close, and snarls that sounded like nothing I'd heard from Tamlin or Lucian or the wolf or any animal filled the still woods. My only hope of getting away alive lay in outrunning them long enough to reach Lucian, and then only if he was there as he'd promised to be. I didn't let myself think of all the hills I would have to climb once I cleared the forest itself, or what I would do if Lucian had changed his mind. The crashing through the brush became louder, closer, and I veered to the right, leaping over the stream. Running water might have stopped the Suriel, but a hiss and a thud close behind me told me it did nothing to hold the Naga at bay. I careened through a thicket, and thorns ripped at my cheeks, I barely felt their stinging kisses or the warm blood sliding down my face. I didn't even have time to wince, not as two dark figures flanked me, closing in to cut me off. My knees groaned as I pushed myself harder, focusing on the growing brightness of the wood's end. But the Naga to my right rushed at me so fast that I could only leap aside to avoid the slashing talons. I stumbled but stayed upright, just as the Naga on my left pounced. I hurled myself into a stop, swinging my bow up in a wide arc. I nearly lost my grip as it connected with that serpentine face, and bone crunched with a horrific screech. I hurtled over his enormous fallen body, not pausing to look for the others. I made it 3 feet before the third Naga stepped in front of me. I swung my bow at his head. He dodged it. The other 2 hissed as they came up behind me, and I gripped the bow harder. Surrounded. I turned in a slow circle, bow ready to strike. One of them sniffed at me, those slitted nostrils flaring. "Scrawny human thing," he spat to the others, whose smiles grew sharper. "Do you know what you've cost us?" I wouldn't go down without a fight, without taking some of them with me. "Go to hell," I said, but it came out in a gasp. They laughed, stepping nearer. I swung the bow at the closest. He dodged it, chuckling. "We'll have our sport, though you might not find it as amusing." I gritted my teeth as I swung again. I would not be hunted down like a deer among wolves. I would find a way out of this. I would. A black-clawed hand closed around the shaft of my bow, and a resounding snap echoed through the 2 silent woods. The air left my chest in a whoosh, and I only had time to half-turn before one of them grabbed me by the throat and hurled me to the ground. He pounded my arm so hard against the earth that my bones groaned and my fingers splayed, dropping the remnants of my bow. "When we're done ripping off your skin, you'll wish you hadn't crossed into Prithian," he breathed into my face, the reek of carrion shoving down my throat. I gagged. "We'll cut you up so fine there won't be much for the crows to pick at." A white-hot flame went through me. Rage or terror or wild instinct, I didn't know. I didn't think. I grabbed the knife in my boot and slammed it into his leathery neck. Blood rained down onto my face, into my mouth as I bellowed my fury, my terror. The Naga slumped back. I scrambled up before the remaining 2 could pin me, but something rock-hard hit my face. I tasted blood and soil and grass as I hit the earth. Stars danced in my vision, and I stumbled to my feet again out of instinct, grabbing for Lucian's hunting knife. Not like this. Not like this. Not like this. One of them lunged for me, and I dodged aside. His talons caught in my cloak and yanked, ripping it into ribbons just as his companion threw me to the ground, my arms tearing beneath those claws. "You'll bleed," one of them panted, laughing under his breath at the knife I lifted. "We'll bleed you nice and slow." He wiggled his talons, perfect for deep, brutal cutting. He opened his mouth again, and a bone-shattering roar sounded through the clearing. Only it hadn't come from the creature's throat. The noise hadn't finished echoing before the Naga went flying off me, crashing into a tree so hard that the wood cracked. I made out the gleaming gold of his mask and hair and the long, deadly claws before Tamlin tore into the creature. The Naga holding me shrieked and released his grip, leaping to his feet as Tamlin's claws shredded through his companion's neck. Flesh and blood ripped away. I kept low to the ground, knife at the ready, waiting. Tamlin let out another roar that made the marrow of my bones go cold and revealed those lengthened canines. The remaining creature darted for the woods. He got only a few steps away before Tamlin tackled him, pinning him to the earth, and disemboweled the Naga in one deep, long swipe. I remained where I lay, my face half buried in leaves and twigs and moss. I didn't try to raise myself. I was shaking so badly that I thought I would fall apart at the seams. It was all I could do to keep holding the knife. Tamlin got to his feet, wrenching his claws out of the creature's abdomen. Blood and gore dripped from them, staining the deep green moss. High Lord, High Lord, High Lord. Feral rage still smoldered in his gaze, and I flinched as he knelt beside me. He reached for me again, but I jerked back, away from the bloody claws that were still out. I raised myself into a sitting position before the shaking resumed. I knew I couldn't get to my feet. "Feyre," he said. The wrath faded from his eyes, and the claws slipped back under his skin, but the roar still sounded in my ears. There had been nothing in that sound but primal fury. "How?" It was all I could manage to say, but he understood me. "I was tracking a pack of them. These 4 escaped and must have followed your scent through the woods. I heard you scream." So he didn't know about the Suriel, and he'd come to help me. He reached a hand toward me, and I shuddered as he ran cool, wet fingers down my stinging, aching cheek. Blood. That was blood on them. And from the stickiness on my face, I knew there was already enough blood splattered on me that it wouldn't make a difference. The pain in my face and my arm faded, then vanished. His eyes darkened a bit at the bruise I knew was already blossoming on my cheekbone, but the throbbing quickly lessened. The metallic scent of magic wrapped around me, then floated away on a light breeze. "I found one dead 1/2 mile away," he went on, his hands leaving my face as he unbuckled his baldric, then shucked off his tunic and handed it to me. The front of my own had been ripped and torn by the talons of the Naga. "I saw one of my arrows in his throat, so I followed their tracks here." I pulled on Tamlin's tunic over my own, ignoring how easily I could see the cut of his muscles beneath his white shirt, and the way the blood soaking it made them stand out even more. A purebred predator, honed to kill without a second thought, without remorse. I shivered again and savored the warmth that leaked from the cloth. High Lord. I should have known, should have guessed. Maybe I hadn't wanted to. Maybe I'd been afraid. "Here," he said, rising to his feet and offering me a blood-stained hand. I didn't dare look at the slaughtered Naga as I gripped his extended hand and he pulled me to my feet. My knees buckled, but I stayed upright. I stared at our linked hands, both coated in blood that wasn't our own. No, he hadn't been the only one to spill blood just now, and it wasn't just my blood that still coated my tongue. Perhaps that made me as much of a beast as him. But he'd saved me, killed for me. I spat onto the grass, wishing I hadn't lost my canteen. "Do I want to know what you were doing out here?" he asked. No, definitely not. Not after he'd warned me plenty of times already. I thought I wasn't confined to the house and garden. I didn't realize I'd come so far. He dropped my hand. On the days that I'm called away to deal with trouble, stay close to the house. I nodded a bit numbly. Thank you, I mumbled, fighting past the shaking racking my body, my mind. The Naga's blood on me became nearly unbearable. I spat again. Not just for this. For saving my life, I mean. I wanted to tell him how much that meant, that the High Lord of the Spring Court thought I was worth saving, but couldn't find the words. His fangs vanished. It was the least I could do. They shouldn't have gotten this far onto my lands. He shook his head, more at himself, his shoulders slumping. Let's go home, he said, sparing me the effort of explaining why I'd been out here in the first place. I couldn't bring myself to tell him that the manor wasn't my home, that I might not even have a home at all anymore. We walked back in silence, both of us blood-drenched and pale. I could still sense the carnage we'd left behind, the blood-soaked ground and trees, the pieces of the Naga. Well, I'd learned something from the surreal, at least, even if it wasn't entirely what I wanted to hear or know. Stay with the High Lord. Fine, easy enough. But as for the history lesson it had been in the middle of giving me, about wicked kings and their commanders and however they tied into the High Lord at my side and the Blight, I still didn't have enough specifics to be able to thoroughly warn my family. But the Suriel had told me not to go looking for further answers. I had a feeling I would surely be a fool to ignore his advice. My family would have to make do with the bare bones of my knowledge then. Hopefully it would be enough. I didn't ask Tamlin anything more about the Naga, about how many he'd killed before those 4 slipped away. Didn't ask him anything at all, because I didn't detect a trace of triumph in him, but rather a deep, unending sort of shame and defeat. Chapter 16. After soaking in the bath for nearly an hour, I found myself sitting in a low-backed chair before my room's roaring fireplace, savoring the feel of Alice brushing out my damp hair. Though dinner was to be served soon, Alice had a cup of molten chocolate brought up and refused to do anything until I'd had a few sips. It was the best thing I'd ever tasted. I drank from the thick mug as she brushed my hair, nearly purring at the feel of her thin fingers along my scalp. But when the other maids had gone downstairs to help with the evening meal, I lowered my mug into my lap. If more fairies keep crossing the court borders and attacking, is there going to be a war? Maybe we should just take a stand. Maybe it's time to say enough, Lucian had said to Tamlin that first night. The brush stilled. Don't ask such questions. You'll call down bad luck. I twisted in my seat, glaring up into her masked face. Why aren't the other High Lords keeping their subjects in line? Why are these awful creatures allowed to roam wherever they want? Someone began telling me a story about a king in Highburn. Alice grabbed my shoulder and pivoted me around. It's none of your concern. Oh, I think it is. I turned around again, gripping the back of the wooden chair. If this spills into the human world, if there's war or this blight poisons our lands... I pushed back against the crushing panic. I had to warn my family, had to write to them, soon. The less you know, the better. Let Lord Tamlin deal with it. He's the only one who can. The Suriel had said as much. Alice's brown eyes were hard, unforgiving. You think no one would tell me what you asked the kitchen to give you today, or realize what you went to trap? Foolish, stupid girl. Had the Suriel not been in a benevolent mood, you would have deserved the death it gave you. I don't know what's worse. This or your idiocy with the puka. Would you have done anything else? If you had a family, I do have a family. I looked her up and down. There was no ring on her finger. Alice noticed my stare and said, "My sister and her mate were murdered nigh on 50 years ago, leaving 2 younglings behind. Everything I do, everything I work for is for those boys. So you don't get the right to give me that look and ask me if I would do anything different, girl." Where are they?
Damn.
Do they live here? Perhaps that was why there were children's books in the study. Maybe those 2 small shining figures in the garden, maybe that had been them. "No, they don't live here," she said, too sharply. "They are somewhere else, far away." I considered what she said, then cocked my head. Do fairy children age differently? If their parents had been killed almost 50 years ago, they could hardly be boys. Some age like you and can breed as often as rabbits. But there are kinds, like me, like the High Fae, who are rarely able to produce younglings. The ones who are born age quite a bit slower. We all had a shock when my sister conceived the second one only 5 years later, and the eldest won't even reach adulthood until he's 75. But they're so rare. All our young are, and more precious to us than jewels or gold. She clenched her jaw tightly enough that I knew that was all I would likely get from her. "I didn't mean to question your dedication to them," I said quietly. When she didn't reply, I added, "I understand what you mean about doing everything for them." Alice's lips thinned, but she said, "The next time that fool Lucian gives you advice on how to trap the Suriel, you come to me. Dead chickens, my sagging ass. All you needed to do was offer it a new robe, and it would have groveled at your feet." By the time I entered the dining room, I'd stopped shaking, and some semblance of warmth had returned to my veins. High Lord of Prithian or no, I wouldn't cower, not after what I'd been through today. Lucian and Tamlin were already waiting for me at the table. "Good evening," I said, moving to my usual seat. Lucian cocked his head in a silent inquiry, and I gave him a subtle nod as I sat. His secret was still safe, though he deserved to be walloped for sending me so unprepared to the Suriel. Lucian slouched a bit in his chair. "I heard you two had a rather exciting afternoon. I wish I could have been there to help." A hidden, perhaps half-hearted apology, but I gave him another little nod. He said with forced lightness, "Well, you still look lovely, regardless of your hell-sent afternoon." I snorted. I'd never looked lovely a day in my life. I thought fairies couldn't lie. Tamlin choked on his wine, but Lucian grinned, that scar stark and brutal. "Who told you that?" "Everyone knows it," I said, piling food on my plate even as I began wondering about everything they'd said to me so far, every statement I'd accepted as pure truth. Lucian leaned back in his chair, smiling with feline delight. "Of course we can lie. We find lying to be an art. And we lied when we told those ancient mortals that we couldn't speak an untruth. How else would we get them to trust us and do our bidding?" My mouth became a thin, tight line. He was telling the truth, because if he was lying, the logic of it made my head spin. "Iron," I managed to say. "Doesn't do us a lick of harm. Only ash, as you well know." My face warmed. I'd taken everything they said as truth. Perhaps the Suriel had been lying today, too, with that long-winded explanation about the politics of the fairy realms, about staying with the High Lord and everything being fixed in the end. I looked to Tamlin. High Lord, that wasn't a lie. I could feel its truth in my bones. Even though he didn't act like the High Lords of legend who had sacrificed virgins and slaughtered humans at will. No, Tamlin was exactly as those fanatic, calf-eyed children of the Blessed had depicted the bounties and comforts of Prythian. Even though Lucian revealed some of our closely guarded secrets, Tamlin said, throwing the last word at his companion with a growl, we've never used your misinformation against you. His gaze met mine. We never willingly lied to you. I managed a nod and took a long sip of water. I ate in silence, so busy trying to decipher every word I'd overheard since arriving that I didn't realize when Lucian excused himself before dessert. I was left alone with the most dangerous being I'd ever encountered. The walls of the room pressed in on me. Are you feeling better? Though he had his chin propped on a fist, concern, and perhaps surprise at that concern, shone in his eyes. I swallowed hard. If I never encounter a Naga again, I'll consider myself fortunate. What were you doing out in the western woods? Truth or lie, lie or truth. Both. I heard a legend once about a creature who answers your questions if you can catch it. Tamlin flinched as his claws shot out, slicing his face. But the wounds closed as soon as they opened, leaving only a smear of blood running down his golden skin, which he wiped away with the back of his sleeve. You went to catch the Suriel. I caught the Suriel, I corrected. And did it tell you what you wanted to know? I wasn't sure he was breathing. We were interrupted by the Naga before it could tell me anything worthwhile. His mouth tightened. I'd start shouting, but I think today was punishment enough. He shook his head. You actually snared a Suriel, a human girl. Despite myself, despite the afternoon, my lips twitched upward. Is it supposed to be hard? He chuckled, then fished something out of his pocket. Well, if I'm lucky, I won't have to trap the Suriel to learn what this is about. He lifted my crumpled list of words. My heart dropped to my stomach. I couldn't think of a suitable lie. Everything was absurd. Unusual, Q, slaying, conflagration. He read the list. I wanted to curl up and die. Words I couldn't recognize from the books. Words that now seemed so simple, so absurdly easy as he was saying them aloud. Is this a poem about murdering me and then burning my body? My throat closed up and I had to clench my hands into fists to keep from hiding my face behind them. Good night, I said, barely more than a whisper, and stood on shaking knees. I was nearly to the door when he spoke again. You love them very much, don't you? I half turned to him. His green eyes met mine as he rose from his chair to walk to me. He stopped a respectable distance away. The list of malformed words was still clutched in his hand. I wonder if your family realizes it, he murmured. That everything you've done wasn't about that promise to your mother, or for your sake, but for theirs. I said nothing, not trusting my voice to keep my shame hidden. I know. I know that when I said it earlier, it didn't come out well. But I could help you right.
Leave me alone, I said. I was almost through the door when I ran into someone, into him. I stumbled back a step. I'd forgotten how fast he was.
I'm not insulting you.
His quiet voice made it all the worse. I don't need your help.
Clearly not, he said with a half smile. But the smile faded. A human who can take down a fairy in a wolf's skin, who ensnared the Suriel and killed 2 Naga on her own. He choked on a laugh and shook his head. The firelight danced along his mask. They're fools. Fools for not seeing it.
He winced, but his eyes held no mischief.
Here, he said, extending the list of words.
I shoved it into my pocket. I turned, but he gently grabbed my arm.
You gave up so much for them.
He lifted his other hand as if to brush my cheek. I braced myself for the touch, but he lowered it before making contact.
Do you even know how to laugh?
I shook off his arm, unable to stop the angry words. High Lord be damned. I don't want your pity. His jade eyes were so bright I couldn't look away.
What about a friend?
Can fairies be friends with mortals?
500 years ago, enough fairies were friends with mortals that they went to war on their behalf.
What? I'd never heard that before, and it hadn't been in that mural in the study.
How do you think the human armies survived as long as they did, and did such damage that my kind even came to agree to a treaty? With ash weapons alone? There were fairies who fought and died at the humans' side for their freedom, and who mourned when the only solution was to separate our peoples.
Were you one of them?
I was a child at the time, too young to understand what was happening, or even be told, he said.
A child. Which meant he had to be over.
But had I been old enough, I would have. Against slavery, against tyranny, I would gladly go to my death, no matter whose freedom I was defending.
I wasn't sure if I would do the same. My priority would be to protect my family, and I would have picked whatever side could keep them safest. I hadn't thought of it as a weakness until now.
For what it's worth, Tamlin said, your family knows you're safe. They have no memory of a beast bursting into their cottage, and think a long-lost, very wealthy aunt called you away to aid her on her deathbed. They know you're alive and fed and cared for. But they also know that there have been rumors of a threat in Prithian, and are prepared to run should any of the warning signs about the wall faltering occur.
You altered their memories? I took a step back. Fairy arrogance. Such fairy arrogance to change our minds, to implant thoughts as if it wasn't a violation.
Glamored their memories, like putting a veil over them. I was afraid your father might come after you, or persuade some villagers to cross the wall with him and further violate the treaty.
And they all would have died anyway, once they ran into things like the puka or the bog or the naga. A silence blanketed my mind until I was so exhausted I could barely think, and couldn't stop myself from saying, "You don't know him. My father wouldn't have bothered to do either." Tamlin looked at me for a long moment.
Yes, he would have.
But he wouldn't. Not with that twisted knee. Not with it as an excuse. I'd realized that the moment the puka's illusion had been ripped away. Fed, comfortable, and safe. They'd even been warned about the blight, whether they understood that warning or not. His eyes were open, honest, He had gone farther than I would have ever guessed toward assuaging my every concern. You truly warned them about the possible threat? A grave nod.
Not an outright warning, but it's woven into the glamour on their memories, along with an order to run at the first sign of something being amiss.
Fairy arrogance, but he had done more than I could. My family might have ignored my letter entirely. Had I known he possessed those abilities, I might have even asked the High Lord to glamour their memories if he hadn't done it himself. I truly had nothing to fret about, save for the fact that they'd probably forget me sooner than expected. I couldn't entirely blame them. My vow fulfilled, my task complete. What was left for me? The firelight danced on his mask, warming the gold, setting the emeralds glinting. Such color and variation, colors I didn't know the names of, colors I wanted to catalog and weave together, colors I had no reason not to explore now. Paint, I said, barely more than a breath. He cocked his head and I swallowed, squaring my shoulders. If it's not too much to ask, I'd like some paint and brushes. Tamlin blinked.
You like art? You like to paint?
His stumbling words weren't unkind. It was enough for me to say, yes, I'm not any good, but if it's not too much trouble, I'll paint outside so I don't make a mess, but...
Outside, inside, on the roof, paint wherever you want, I don't care, he said. But if you need paint and brushes, you'll also need paper and canvas.
I can work. Help around the kitchen or in the gardens to pay for it.
You'd be more of a hindrance. It might take a few days to track them down, but the paint, the brushes, the canvas, and the space are yours. Work wherever you want. This house is too clean anyway.
Thank you. I mean it, truly. Thank you.
Of course.
I turned, but he spoke again.
Have you seen the gallery?
I blurted, "There's a gallery in this house?" He grinned. Actually grinned, the High Lord of the Spring Court.
I had it closed off when I inherited this place.
When he inherited a title he seemed to have little joy in holding.
It seemed like a waste of time to have the servants keep it cleaned.
Of course it would, to a trained warrior. He went on.
I'm busy tomorrow, and the gallery needs to be cleaned up, so... the next day. Let me show it to you the next day.
He rubbed at his neck, faint color creeping into those cheeks of his, more alive and warm than I'd yet seen them.
Please. It would be my pleasure.
And I believed him that it would. I nodded dumbly. If the paintings along the halls were exquisite, then the ones selected for the gallery had to be beyond my human imaginings. I would like that. Very much. He smiled at me still, broadly and without restraint or hesitation. Isaac had never smiled at me like that. Isaac had never made my breath catch, just a little bit. The feeling was startling enough that I walked out, grasping the crumpled paper in my pocket, as if doing so could somehow keep that answering smile from tugging on my lips.
All right. And that was chapters 15 and 16. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. I will see you all on, Patreon people, I'll see you tomorrow. And for everybody else, I'll see you on Sunday. Love you guys all, and peace.